Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show.
Good evening, Jason.
Hey, good evening, Aaron. How we doing?
Doing good. Snow this morning.
Yep. Got some snow. It all blew
Everyone's
away,
heard
though.
it. Everyone's heard it the last few weeks. I hate the cold. I still hate the cold.
Sounds like me on our next episode. It's hot.
It's hot. Which hopefully we'll have that dropping in the next couple of weeks on Paraflex. We will. I know we've been saying we've been doing the final edit, but we're right there now.
Yep, we're right there. Should be coming out anytime. So
I want to talk about right off Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, our sponsor. Twinkle Twinkle Little Store is going to have to move out of their downtown location, the Tivoli, which is super sad.
Yes, it is.
That is such a great place for them to be. The energy in there and what they do, it's super awesome.
Yep, I love that building.
The building has been bought by an investment group, and they are going to move the business to the mall. So they'll be in Frontier Mall, and we will let you know when that's going to happen. They are doing a Black Friday sale with 25% off. So go down there and see Tim and Patricia on Friday, and this weekend, Small Business Saturday. Get down there and see everybody.
Yeah, check them out. Really cool location before they move, but hopefully the mall is a good spot for them and gets them, more people to, in there and see what they have to offer. So,
yep. Tell them that we sent you. We always like to let them know that we do get their stuff out there, that we told them we would. They're a great sponsor for us, and they're great people.
Yes, they are.
Tonight we have Jill Pope. Jill worked for Visit Cheyenne. She was the director of operations and the manager of the Cheyenne Street Railway. She put together the trolley tours with the haunted trolley tours and the Christmas light tours. Jill also wrote some books, Haunted Cheyenne, Haunted F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and Gracious Ghosts of Cheyenne. So we are happy to bring Jill to the show.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Jill.
Good to see you.
Jill is having a little connectivity issue, but I think we're going to work with it, and we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Good to see you too. The one thing I forgot to throw in there is that Jason and I both consider you a friend.
Yep. Known Jill a long time now.
Sorry, I didn't even hear you. Yeah, we go way back. Gosh, I'm trying to remember what year, Jason, that you and I first worked at the Knights of Pythias investigating together.
I want to say it was like 08, 09.
Okay. I was thinking even earlier. And Aaron, you helped on the trolley tours and at the ghost tours, and we had so much fun doing that.
Yeah. As a Cheyenne gunslinger, we did a lot of stuff with the trolley tours back in the day with you, and it was always fun.
Yeah, they're a good time for sure. We try to make them entertaining as well as telling all the great stories as we go, and some good history along the way, And of course, I've retired from that, but I did that for 20 years, and it's kind of what really got me going on writing the books. I started in 2002, I believe it was, at Visit Cheyenne, which was then Cheyenne Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, but every year the ghost tours need to be different since there's not a lot of tourism in October in Cheyenne. It's not our prime season. And so we have to get those local folks to come back in. So the stories have to be fresh and, lots of new good material each year. Yep. So it got to be crazy fun trying to find new stories, but there's a lot of activity around. So I think we met our goals.
So did the trolley tour start as Cheyenne history tours, or was it both at the same time?
Yeah, so the historical tours began in 1988, prior to my being there, and then and so I came in and started writing those after I became the trolley manager, and got into the history of Cheyenne. I had moved here when I was 15, so I hadn't had all that in school, and so it was really fun to learn the Old West history and study all that, and I actually became a resource in town where a lot of folks would call me with historical questions, and the teachers, third and fourth grade teachers, would check in with me on facts and questions that they could use to teach the kids Cheyenne history or Wyoming history. And so that was a fun part of the job as well. But then the ghost tours, that was kind of right up my alley. I tell you, when that show Unsolved Mysteries first came out, I was all over that. That was like a bomb, go to. And so I loved working on the ghost tours, and it was fun because, we had a little theatrical performance sort of with all of the tours, ghosts along the route. And I think Aaron was a ghost inside of the trolley one time. And
we
just
did do something inside. That inside definitely got people's hearts racing.
Yeah, because they thought you were a regular passenger on the tour, and then you jumped up in your crazy cowboy gear, and it was fun.
Jumping off the trolley, shooting shots in the air. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It was fun.
Yeah. One time we had a horse and rider go riding past a ghost rider, out at Holiday Park, and we had some things around the cemetery, but we always tried to be really careful that we were respectful when we did stuff around the cemetery. But yeah, it was interesting to learn a lot of the, once I found, had ghost stories, a lot of times I would try to find stories of things that might have happened at that residence or that location. And sometimes I would just, being a classic nerd, I would go to the state archives and just look through old newspapers. And if I saw things that were quite tragic, I would make a note. And I just had like this little database. And then every time I got a new story, I checked that database to see, is there something that went on here? And there were times when, I would have, this happened at that address. So could very well tie together depending on the activity. But it's fun. I mean, I could do that full time. For sure.
Yeah, I could always tell when I met you, it was a labor of love doing the, the trolley tours and all that. It was, amazing seeing you start that up and, what it did, for Cheyenne.
Yeah, and they started it a few years before I got there. And I will say that Valerie Martin has been there at least 35 years, if not more. And her father, Robert Morgan, was also a trolley guide. So the two of them had more fun doing tours together and doing those ghost tours together.
I remember.
So she was definitely as involved in writing stories as much as I was. But
Val is a wealth of knowledge. Oops. You keep cutting in and out there. I'm sorry. Val is a wealth of knowledge on paranormal stuff in Cheyenne. And I remember when the Gunslingers first started helping with that, we had that saloon on 15th and Cary.
The Cody Saloon.
Her and her dad were standing up on the bar telling this. It's a story or a poem. I can't remember which. And gosh, they were fantastic together.
They were quite a duo, and their family is extremely into history. Her mother as well. So yeah, they're perfect for that. And he always had the big handlebar mustache and everything, fit the part. But and then Val and I, again, because we wanted fresh stories, we would go door to door downtown at businesses and even knocking on some old houses saying, have you had any paranormal activity, anything weird here? And you'd be surprised how many stories we got doing that. It was a little crazy. And there we got some weird looks now and then, but and when you're trying to figure your route out, sometimes you have a little few blocks where you don't have a story. So that's where we'd be knocking. Hello, do you have ghosts? And we got some really crazy stories that way. So it worked. But after a while, I think I got a bit of a reputation or whatever. Well, Facebook and such helped. So I started hearing from people, getting emails and calls and people just stopping in the depot all the time and sharing their stories. So that was really fun as well. I think the CEO was like, okay, enough on the ghost stories. but it was fun. And I think he was a little shocked how many people stopped in to have their book signed and stuff, because that's all promoting Cheyenne. just not in the normal way. But
Definitely.
Yeah,
we had
absolutely.
folks coming. In fact, I held a paranormal convention with I can't say their name right now. A group out of Loveland, Dory Spence, and we held a convention at the depot, and she had one at the Plains Hotel before that, and we were able to have a lot of fun things there. There was classes on tarot card reading and classes on pendulums and just all different things and presentations, and it was a lot of fun. Vendors and all that. It was a lot of fun. A lot of work, but it's pretty well attended as well. So
that is a lot of work. That is something that oh gosh, you keep locking up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're cutting out on me too, but it's okay.
It is a lot of work, and that is something that WOW has talked about, and hopefully in the future, something that we can work on. The database you talked about, if you still have that, we'd love to see it.
Yeah. I can't hear you. Okay, I lost you, but yeah, I also have a database where whenever I had free time or a lot of my own evenings or whatever, I would just go through old newspapers and write everything that was at different addresses, like from advertisements or phone books or whatever, and just keep adding, on and on. So then when I have ghost stories, I could see who had lived there or what businesses had been there over the years. So that was kind of fun. But again, you could spend 24/7 doing that and never get it all.
Absolutely. Do you still have that database? Do you ever, contribute to it anymore?
I do.
Yeah.
No, I don't really contribute it to it. I'm usually 1,000+ miles away and playing, with the birds and the squirrels. But, I don't know. For those of you who don't know, I travel full time. I happen to be in Cheyenne right now, so it's fun to see everyone and do these podcasts and such when I'm here. But yeah, most of the time I'm on the road. However, I did write past and present historical book while I was on the road, and my son Brady Britton was the photographer of the present day photos. So
cool.
That was nice to have a project to do together. Yeah,
absolutely.
Nice. So, and of course I got the historical pictures mainly from the state archives. Susie there is amazing. So if you ever need help at the state archives, go ask for Susie. She's amazing.
Good to know.
So when you were gathering all that stuff for the trolley tours and the ghost tours, is that when you decided you wanted to write the Haunted Cheyenne book?
Actually, it's kind of a weird story. I had been mulling over writing a book in my own mind and had actually told my husband, I'm going to write a book, but I wasn't planning on it being ghost stories. But, when you talk about manifesting or whatever, I literally got a call in less than a week after I said that out loud from History Press. And they had seen a blog that I did for Visit Cheyenne and Cheyenne Street Railway that around Halloween time. I just did a little blog with some little stories and such. And they had seen that. And they asked if I would be interested in writing a book. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, can you fill out these forms, send in some sample writing? And so I did. And she called back and she goes, we really want you to do this book, but is there any way you can have it done in 2.5 months? And that's not very long to write a book.
Yeah.
When I'm working full time already. But, we had the stories, a lot of them written for the ghost tours. So there was a couple things I had to do. One is they were written as though you were sitting there looking at it. And so I had to kind of change them and say, okay, now we're in front of there. This is a red building, blah, blah. So I had to change some of that. And I also needed to make sure that anything that Val had written, I changed it to my own writing because I didn't want to plagiarize her, of course.
Right.
So I did that. But then I actually went and got permission from every business to, talk about it and talk to, all the business owners. And on the homes, I listed the block and not the house number. So I did that. there's a lot of those stories that might have been from 3-4 owners previous or whatever as well. So I just listed the block and told a little bit about the house, but you can usually kind of figure out which ones they are. But and so we got her done in 2.5 months, and it was a lot, but it was really fun. And I'll tell you what, I'm never going to get rich off of these books. I mean, I don't make enough on them to do that, but I got to do a lot of presentations, and when Cheyenne had their 150th, I got to present at the Civic Center with all of these important people, and then me telling ghost stories. But this is kind of fun, and I've just done a lot of things. Wyoming State Museum or different places, Old West Museum, did a lot of presentations, and that's a kick. I did some at the Atlas Theater, and and like I said, the conventions that Dory had, and it's just fun. I used to have a real hard time getting in front of people and speaking, but I guess I got used to it.
Yeah, that'll get you used to it real quick. One thing I enjoy about your books that I always thought was really cool is,
and I like it when I really can
your books have really become a part of Cheyenne. I've noticed, ever since they started coming out, like everywhere you go in town here, whether it's a gift shop or, like the travel stops or, the grocery store, there's the stand. I noticed
them at the grocery store this week. I was like, oh, look, there they are.
Twinkle, little store.
Yeah,
yep. Twinkle, twinkle. Yep.
See, I should be getting rich, but I'm not. No, but it's fun. I mean, it's fun. I love the ghost stories, so I'm glad that the books are out there and available for folks. And the first time I saw them on the library shelf, that kind of was like a wow feeling. It's like, oh, that's my book. And I was in the library in Fort Collins, and they had my books down there, and I was like, well, that's fun.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in the Haunted Cheyenne book, what is your favorite story in that book?
Gosh, I don't know if I have like a favorite story. And it depends. Some are touching stories, and some are more scary. Do you want me to do a story, or there's one in the depot that I kind of like. I don't know if you want me to read one or not.
Let's see what we have at the end of the show, and we can get to do some there.
There's one that is called "Help Me," and that is where the spirit writes "Help me" in the frosted glass, and so that was a really kind of wow story for me. I thought that one was great, but there's a lot of fun ones, and I would do a different one if we do them any at the end. The depot is full of stories. And if you think about it, and as I researched, there were so many railroad deaths. I mean, it was people, jumping off and getting sucked under and their legs cut off. I mean, they're squished between the train cars. There was just so many, just even in the Cheyenne train yard.
Yeah.
There was a murder, at least one murder out there that I have documented in the train yards. The Charles Bernard, the superintendent for UP, was shot and murdered inside of the depot lobby. Just a lot of them. A call girl, hooker, whatever, shot a man when he got off a train, and so there's just a lot of stories around that. And then it was just first of all, even before Cheyenne was truly fully built up and established, when the white man started coming across, there were a lot of battles with the Native Americans and the white man, and I went to the archive and read the coroner's reports for like the first 5 years, because they aren't like today's reports. They would write like one line of how that person died, and it would say savage attack, which is what they called the Native Americans, or Indian scalping, or things like that. And it was probably about every third person that they had a coroner's report on in the first year or so. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And people were buried in different places, and over the years some bodies have been found. Plus they moved the cemetery. They had a cemetery over by Pioneer Park, and then they moved it to where Lakeview is, but I think that was even a little farther south, if I'm correct. And then they moved some of those bodies again. So there's just been a lot of moving folks around, and they have found more than once. Like one guy was digging a hole for like a telephone pole and found a skull. And so they ended up reburying the skull because otherwise they had to pay for the burial costs.
Oh,
like at the
interesting.
funeral home.
Oh,
Okay.
geez.
Yeah. So they put it back in and left it there, which, it's already been there 100 years or more. So
Yeah.
why not? And then they found 3 soldiers over in that same area near the Pioneer Park School when they were digging like a crawl space or basement or something. And they were in military. There were buttons that were like military buttons still there. So they knew that was military men as well. So yeah. So, when you start moving cemeteries around, you get some interesting stories. They've had that in Denver as well. There was a big cemetery moved, and they started finding bodies near the Capitol building. Got a little crazy, but
So then you did, speaking about the soldiers, then you did the haunted F.E. Warren book, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
I deliberately didn't put F.E. Warren stories in the first book, thinking, well, if I really like doing this, I'll present another book. Because typically they'll only let you do one on per town. It's a series. Well, let me show. I've got my Haunted Cheyenne. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, okay.
It's got the Tivoli. It's kind of cutting out, I guess. But and then here's the Haunted Warren Air Force Base. But I don't think you can see it. Anyway, there's such great history on the base, and there's always going to be crazy ghost paranormal activity on a base. And Warren Air Force Base was originally, Fort Russell, and it is the longest continually operating military post in the United States. It has never closed. It has changed from Army to Air Force and things like that, but it has never closed. So it has been running since 1867.
Wow.
I
So
did not know
that's
that.
a good fact. Yeah. We've had some fun. I mean, Sammy Davis Jr. was there. We've had some fun there's definitely some fun characters and stories with the base as well. And I love reading the old newspaper stories about the fellas the soldiers out at the base, and payday, they all came in, and there was literally the first trolley. This is the 3rd trolley system in Cheyenne, and the first one had lines, the ones that ran into the ground, and it went to the base and back so that they could come in and spend their paychecks. So, but lots of good history, lots of good stories, and even the general's house is one of those that's full of stories. The old hospital, so many things there. And I did an investigation out there with a group a long time ago, Cheyenne Paranormal Investigations, and it was a little crazy. There were a few times where I was unnerved for sure in that hospital. And people here, there was a big breakout of like malaria, yellow fever, scarlet fever, those things. And so they would take them from the main hospital, and there was a tunnel underground that came out by a door just outside of the old hospital building, which was 37, I believe, and then the one they were using at the time was building 34. And they would, when the patient was going to die within like the next day or something, they would take them over there, and they didn't want all of the patients panicking when people were dying. They were kind of dropping like flies. So they would take them through the tunnel and not bring them back. And so to this day, you can hear the sound of the gurneys rolling through the tunnels, which is kind of like eerie for sure. And the lights go on and off behind you as you go on their own. So that's a little crazy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wanted to get out there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Access is harder. And that was a little harder writing the book. But fortunately, one of my colleagues at Visit Cheyenne, they were military, and so she was able to bring me a couple times so I could, get a few pictures and do some things. I mean, I had permission. I absolutely got permission from the base before I could do this, but yeah, you don't want to push that, but
yeah, I'm sure you had to run
the
stuff through
stories,
PAO and all that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I have, a file, an inch thick of paperwork that we did, but yeah, it was all approved, and it was, I think it's just real. I think there's some really interesting, crazy stories out there, and maybe a little more. Some of those stories are darker than, a lot of my stories are like lights going on and off, footsteps, blah blah. Not necessarily dark or evil, but a lot of the ones on the base are pretty scary. And what I found is that people that used to live on the base and are in other parts of the country were ordering the book like crazy because they had lived in a house that had activity, and they wanted to see if their house was in there and their friends' houses, and they knew some of the stories because when you live out there, and it's very prevalent. So, but some of them are really kind of fun. Some of them are dark. And there's one house that actually, where they say that they have ectoplasm that shows up in the wall and the ceiling. Now, I always have to, I'm a little skeptic. I have to, but there was more than one family that lived there that said that happened. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that's, so I don't, if I don't think the people are, believing what they're telling me, if they're making something up, I won't use it. But so, I mean, I can't exactly 100% validate if a story is true or not.
Oh yeah.
When people come to me, I mean, yeah. And then I think a lot of times there are scientific answers for what's going on, for the noises they're hearing or the cold that they're feeling or whatever. I think a lot of times there is answers, but I mean, I've just heard so many hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of stories that I just am not able to write them all off as imagination or scientific. I just think sometimes they really are. And I probably even feel that way, especially about some of the ones in Gracious Ghosts where somebody's, their days or hours are limited, but yet they're seeing loved ones from the other side that, they are reaching out and seeing them and talking to them. And so I don't know, some of those stories are pretty cool to me and touching. And not everybody gets into the dark, scary, demony stuff, but they do believe in angels and guidance from your loved ones on the other side. And so
absolutely.
That's for them. Gracious Ghosts is for them. And I didn't know if I should have the word ghosts in the title, but in the publishers, it took a little bit to talk them into doing that, publishing that third one, because it wasn't part of their series. They have all these different series. They have the past and present series. They have the haunted cities and, a lot of different series. So this was a standalone, but it's done quite well. And it's got a lot of neat information, I think. So
now does that one,
it's also good for people. Go ahead.
Does that one also do locations in Cheyenne, or is that more just stories from
it is
people?
mainly Cheyenne. I had some that weren't in Cheyenne, and they actually took them out just to keep it more Cheyenne. There are a few things that aren't. I mean, it's like there's some personal stories in there. So one was about a relative a long time ago in Minnesota, things like that. But that says that whole part one says that they're things that actually happened to me or my family. And then part 2 is houses in Cheyenne, and part 3 is business locations in Cheyenne. There's like the VA hospital, things like that. So,
Gotcha.
I mean, hospitals are always full of activity as well.
Yep.
But
well, one thing I've always loved about
the VA,
the
DePaul, supposedly there's a spirit of a nun at DePaul or whatever it's called now.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Oh, I was going to say one thing I enjoy about ghost stories, and like you were saying, it's so hard to corroborate everything, make sure, I mean, number one, you're talking about such a non-tangible topic, right? But
exactly.
I love listening to these stories because they get people to think, whether you're a skeptic and you don't believe it, and it leads to coming out with some ideas on how this could happen naturally, right? Like, no matter what, a good ghost story always gets people thinking, and that's one thing I really love about it.
Yeah. Well, I think back to when I first met you, and you had audio in the Nights of Pythias, and I sat down, put the headphones on, and I mean, there was clearly words, I'm trying to remember what they were now, what the words were, but there was clearly conversation and words. It might have been Get Out.
I think the one we had was I had sneezed.
I can't remember what the words were. It's in
I think the EVP I showed you is when I sneezed up in the lodge, and we got Bless You right after that, and we had voice comparisons of everybody on the team, saying Bless You to show that it wasn't even close to being anybody in the room. Yeah.
And there was on that one snippet, there was 3 different audible words or audible sentences.
Yep.
I think they were maybe like 2 or 3 words each one. And the one we couldn't determine what they said, but the other 2, I knew we were able to understand it. And so it might have been Bless You. But then that picture you got at the top of the stairs at the nights is incredible. It's one of my favorites of everything. I also have a really cool one. I have a really cool one like that in the depot as well, where we were doing a little thing where we would take people to the basement and let them use their, EMF readers, which down there's a lot of stuff, electrical stuff. So I don't know how much you really could get, but we would take them down and let them do that and take pictures and tell some stories from down there and different things. And one of the gals that worked at the depot came down. She's like, I've never done this. I said, well, and she didn't have any equipment. I said, just take some pictures and we'll look at them. And by God, about 3 seconds later, I'm still standing next to her, and she gasps, and I look, and there's a full dark silhouette of a woman standing on the old wooden stairs, 6 feet in front of us. It was insane. And that picture, I mean, because I was right there when she took it, I knew there was no forgery, no Photoshop, it was pretty amazing. Creeped me out a little bit. Honestly, I'm not usually too jumpy about any of it. And I kind of oddly feel like most of the spirits kind of like me because I tell their stories, and help get out what might have happened. And, I don't know, I always try to be respectful. So it seems like sometimes like they're really around me. And my husband hasn't always enjoyed that because we have some weird things happen sometimes. But my office, my coworkers were sometimes like, oh my God, they hated it when I'd start working on the ghost tour because things happen, just crazy little things. But I always kind of got a kick out of it. Except sometimes, like one time the whole screen with all the text was just like fluttering back and forth and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, no, don't go away. Don't let me lose it.
Don't lose my work. Yeah.
Right.
It was before the cloud, and I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah. If you're gonna mess with it, control.
But Val and I would email them back and forth. Yeah. So, but I started, putting it on Drive too. What's that?
It was like, please save it first.
Yes. Yeah, and I got to where I was saving like constantly because weird things would just happen, and the music would play by itself. And my boss, as a joke, bought me some of those candles that have saints on them. Those Catholic candles that you burn with Mary and all the different saints, and put them next to my computer so we could burn them.
Oh, that's funny.
I was working on the ghost tour. It was funny, but yeah, things happen, crazy things. But yeah, and we'd be sitting watching TV, and my ghost books came flying out of the shelf and landed at our feet. That was a little wow. Just a lot of things. And now I'm like, well, I should have looked to see what that story was, because I didn't at the time. I just picked it up, and I should have saw what page it was open, because it opened, it landed with it open. But,
that would have been interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah. we had a friend live with us for a while, and he got pretty freaked out. In fact, I think that's why he ended up going to get his own place, because it felt like the spirit was really messing with them. I mean, they were constantly just like, hey, in his ear, and things would fall over in his room, and just a lot. I mean, never anything terrible, but just often, so that he felt uncomfortable. So
after you retired from doing that work, did the activity slowly taper down, or does it stay pretty active around you?
It's not as active around me. I don't have it constantly because I'm really not writing their stories much or anything. But it's not completely gone.
Interesting.
For sure, there's times. Yeah. But when I'm telling the stories and working on projects and books, it's like in my face kind of activity, just a lot. So, and even within the building. So like when I was at the depot, people in some of the neighboring offices came running over and going, oh my God, this just happened. And it was things like, 3 or 4 things on their shelf, like the photo frames would lay flat and the other things would knock over, but there hadn't been like a train go by or anything, and one gal did have scratches on her leg, which was that I don't like that sort of thing. And I do have photos of the scratches though, and it was the 3, so that was icky. But there's also definitely at least one child spirit in the depot, and I've had, I'm going to say, at least 10 different stories from different people with the child spirit in the depot.
Interesting.
One was an employee who really wasn't into any of this, and she was working in the visitor center, and it was a really snowy January day, and I mean there was like nobody out shopping, nobody out doing anything. And so you could about hear a pin drop in that depot lobby. And all of a sudden she just hears giggling, all of this giggling. And she gets out of the visitor center and she goes out and she looks, and there's nobody in there, and she even looks, and there's another little cutout behind the visitor center. Nobody's there. She goes back and she sits down, and as soon as she gets comfortable, it starts again. And this happened 3 times. And finally she came upstairs. She was like, oh, it was kind of freaking out. So yeah, and that's just one of many. The Chamber of Commerce had a lot of, I don't know if they still do, but a lot of children's giggling and things going on in there as well. And the person that used to be in management, she'd have things slide off the table like cups and stuff, but then she'd hear the giggling of the kids. So it was a little
little mischievous dudes running around. Yep.
So a lot of, yeah. Oh, one that was really weird was that one of the cleaning crew was there at night, and he sprayed Windex on the glass in the door to the office, and he started to wipe, and on the other side he saw the fingertips go all the way down on the other side of the glass, like a foot from his face.
Wow.
So that was he was pretty freaked out.
Yeah, I'd say that'd do it.
And there was a lot of times where you'd see a man in a vintage clothing with like the derby hat and things, and something like a walking cane and stuff in the depot. That wasn't unusual. So there was a woman that was often seen in the second floor ladies' bathroom that was more like from the 50s. So, okay. I mean, but again, this is a report that you get from 6 people and not 1.
Right.
So sometimes if somebody hears it, then their imagination might go, and then they think they see it. That's possible. But I just find that when you have a location and you hear stories from a lot of different people, there was a home on Capitol Avenue where at least 4 different people who had lived there over the years, and one who had been hired to do some remodeling, all told me, each probably 5 years apart, about things that happen in that house. So that's always, to me, when you hear it from people that don't even know each other.
Yeah.
Or know the history of the house, that there's been other people report activity. And that used to be a doctor's office in that house. And when they did a remodel, they found a bunch of medications up hidden like in the above the ceiling tiles, and they even found cyanide. So it was a little like, ooh, what went on there? Wow. Yeah. what went on there. And they found a hidden staircase that had been closed off. It was interesting. But there was also a very, like a woman, very maternal woman who would be seen standing over the crib of their baby. And at first they were terrified, but then they realized it was like she was watching out for the child, and she seemed to be endearing. So they quit worrying. So just so many stories. You start talking, I could, literally there's thousands, I think. So, and some of the ones like that I heard at the Capitol building, I was like, I don't know if that's true or not. You get, because things will get distorted over the years sometimes. That's why it's good to write down everything and who told you, and even the date, and those sort of things, and just try to keep track. I tried to keep really good notes that I passed on to Sue, who is the new trolley manager. So.
Nice. Gosh. And so now you just travel and you get to see all these cool places.
And a lot of them, like, go ahead.
Up in like the Upper Peninsula, and then you were in like North Carolina or somewhere, and you're just having a good old time now.
Yeah, so we've been in Sedona, we've been in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, we've been in Kentucky and Tennessee, and we've spent 4 summers in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, because it is just heaven on earth. It is so lovely. So, and there are a lot of little old historical buildings and stuff there that I haven't really got into going in and asking them the stories and such, but I did read the Haunted Upper Peninsula book, so, which was interesting because the author of that book was somebody that Visit Cheyenne had brought in to visit Cheyenne and do what we call a fam tour, and then she wrote articles about Cheyenne, did a great job. But it was fun when I saw the book and it was somebody I knew. So cool. She lives in Chicago. Yeah. So.
Oh, geez.
But a lot of their stories are about shipwrecks. The Edmund Fitzgerald went down there in 1975. And I see that question. So I haven't really done any investigations of the places I've gone now. However, I'm always reading, if there's historical information at a place. And we've gone to like some old forts and stuff. So I've done that, but I haven't done any investigations But I do like if there's a book on the ghosts or on something, I'll at least thumb through it.
Yeah, nice.
But I mean, it's not that I won't. It's just that it hasn't really been a part of this phase of my life so far. But I'm always open to the experiences and to the other side. Hearing from my loved ones. My mom is passed, my first husband is deceased, so I'm always feeling them around, and I physically feel them touch me. So that's interesting. Like, a little pat on the back or leg or whatever I can feel. So my husband let my dog in. Oh, yeah.
Well, and you came and helped us out last February. We did our Twilight Tales ghost story at the Knights of Pythias, and you came and read the Knights of Pythias section of your book. Oh, what a cute dog.
Isn't he sweet? Yeah, and that was fun, and I love doing events like that. In some of that story, with the finding the coffin with the body, the skeletal remains in it under the stage, that's a pretty crazy story. And like I said that night, if I didn't know Mike Mansfield, the man, he's deceased now, but such a lovely person. And if I had not known him, and somebody told me that story, I would have said, yeah, I don't buy it. I really wouldn't have. But Mike was telling me, looking me in the eye, like, I found this casket and there was remains in there. And the coroner or funeral director, whoever, said that it was that of a young lady around 15 years old.
Yep.
So, wow. That's insane. But again, living out in the Wild West, things weren't always kosher or whatever. I mean, they weren't just kosher, is probably not the right word because I'm Jewish, but I mean, they just weren't. They were kind of lawless, and people could get by with things that you would never get by with today. And it was just wild. It was different. So,
Well, and
yeah.
back
Well,
then
we
they
have-
didn't have fake skeletons either. You know, they didn't have
No.
those artificial
no.
remains, right? So for the
Yeah.
ceremonial parts of it, you know, with the knights, the masons, the odd fellows, you know, they've all, you know,
Yeah.
had to
And,
resort to
the Knights of
using, you know, real
Pythias
skeletons. Yep.
was real ones. It was a very highly regarded fraternal organization, and all of the founding fathers and the who's who of Cheyenne, the men, and there was actually and I'm trying to remember what the sisters, there's something for the women as well. I can't
Yep,
think
the
of it.
Pythian sisters. Yep.
The Pythian sisters. Okay, yeah. So, but it was highly regarded. And I mean, Francis E. Warren was a member. And as you walk down I think Harry Hines, maybe, as you walk down the row of pictures, you know, all of these names that you will recognize in Cheyenne's history are there. So you don't want to think that, you know, it was too scandalous, but somebody put that casket with, you know, this young lady's bones under that stage.
Yep.
And it wasn't found for years. So,
right. We have been lucky
Crazy.
enough, you know, over our investigations and public investigations where they come in to find out that we feel that she did die a natural death.
yeah. Some of that cut out. So they said she died of a natural death. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Well, that would be good.
we've done, you know,
That's-
we've done some work and have been able to determine her first name started with the letter V. So we call her V now. For about, I don't know, about the past 5 years.
It's funny because I always thought of her as Victoria. So
Oh, that's
I don't
funny.
know. I even think that's in my notes somewhere, but I don't know. That's just, I don't know if that's her name, but that is something that that's how I regard her as Victoria. So, and I looked for Victoria's in the papers that were missing. I spent a lot of hours looking through for old newspaper articles, but I don't think that just because somebody left town, it would have necessarily had this person's missing back then.
Yep.
Like they would today, you know? So,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still talk to her. She's still very active up there. Yep.
Nice. Interesting. Well, that building is really interesting. There was also in the basement, somebody was taking photos, and then in the mirror reflection, there was like this whole person that nobody knew that wasn't there that showed up in a mirror. And I don't know if you've seen that, Jason. Yeah. So that always intrigued me. And then there was, I know there was a lot of people feeling tugging on their pant legs, almost like a little kid would do, but hard to say. I do know that they used that casket because the casket that the girl was found in was homemade, and they used it in the haunted house. And I don't know if that's a good idea.
It's still there.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, who's to say? But it seems a little scary. But there's some stories. A 90-some-year-old man told me about like they didn't use Ouija boards, but when he and his wife and their neighbor couple would do this thing with a card table, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a thing. Like if you look up back in the days of like Houdini or whatever, you know, people would do this card table thing, and it was sort of like Ouija board stuff. And he had all kinds of crazy stories about things
the
that
old
happened
card
to them.
table
You know,
seances, and
this was like, yeah, and this was like 1900, you know, or early 1910, 1950. I don't know. He was pretty. Well, let's see. I met him in maybe 1990, and he was 92, so maybe 1920, 2030. So, yeah. But he was interesting for sure. The things over the years, and again, you know, there's a lot of folks out there that'll love to take your money and be shady and try to convince you of things that aren't legit. But then there's some people that just can't quite figure out how they would know what they know. So,
Yeah, and I think that's why we kind of, just do it the way we present what we find, and
Yeah.
let people, learn and come to their own decisions from that. And
Yeah.
happy to answer any questions on, anything that we put out there, and help show our legitimacy. But yeah,
Right.
it's such a
Right.
hard
Yeah.
field
And
because it
there's
has
times when you can
been.
go, okay, well, I know this happened. Yeah. I feel like it's a lot more accepted today that there's some paranormal things going on. And, when we started these ghost tours, there wasn't any of these ghost hunter shows. None of that was there. So people going to this ghost tour was like their only main access of ever getting any of this type of thing. But then it started getting on cable, and now it's all over
Yep.
the place. I mean, all you have to do is turn on your TV and you can almost always find something paranormal, which is fun. But like I said, back when Unsolved Mysteries came on, it was like, oh, this is the coolest, because there wasn't anything before that really talked about any of these, things. Why did this airplane go missing? And why is, just different things. People that walk through the parking lot and the light bulbs over the overhead burst, there's all of these crazy things. And some of them have answers. And some don't, but
I grew up on that
it's
show,
all very intriguing.
Unsolved Mysteries. And then
it was the best.
Reader's Digest, the Strange Stories, Amazing Facts, that book that was like this thick of just all the unknown stuff up to that point. And oh my God, that was like my Bible when I was a kid, man. I would just read that religiously. And
I loved all that. But then you get married and you go out, and I'm doing, normal mom stuff and all that. And then I get this job, and all of a sudden I am getting paid to find ghost stories and write about them. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
So I love that. It was a good fit for me as part of the job. I enjoyed the historical research as well. And I'd never really been into history in school that much, but Cheyenne's history is fun. Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane and Wyatt Earp. I mean, they were all there. And so a lot of fun with that sort of thing. As you know, Aaron, with your gunslingers.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So,
you get to learn in all that history and then get to pass it on to those people that come to like our show, the Gunslinger Show, and you're passing on that Cheyenne history.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, and just crazy stuff. There is a story, I believe, in the first book about a Wild West shootout on what is now Pioneer Avenue. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember the name of the street before, and now I can't think of it. I used to know everything, boom, 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 but now I'm not looking at it every day.
Right.
So, yeah, my husband asked what your Frontier Days started, and I really had a headache trying to remember. But 1897, I think it was. Yeah, but it took me a while to bring that up. So,
well, and there we go. That's another Tivoli connection too, because they met at the Tivoli to discuss starting Frontier Days.
Yes, the owner Richardson was one of there was a few men that went to Greeley to the Potato Festival because the economy in Cheyenne wasn't good at the time, so that's why they started Cheyenne Frontier Days, and it was, I believe, a one-day event the first year. But folks came up from Colorado, and they got quite a bit of traffic, and so it was a big success. So then they continued, and it became 2 days and 3 days, and up to now our 10-day event.
Yep.
And initially it was out over by Pioneer Park School. It was not where it is now.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of where that little baseball park and things like it.
Oh,
was there in that area. So
nice.
I've got, or in the office, I'm sure they still have photos and things from way back when. It's kind of cool. One of my favorite Frontier Days pictures ever, and I'm not sure, I think it might have been at the old location, but it maybe was at the new one, but they didn't have a fence. They just were having the activities, and people were in a circle standing around, and they would open umbrellas and hold them, the point out, with the umbrellas, just to keep the animals inside.
Oh, wow.
Like they
saw
improvised
round pen, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Inside.
Now that's
I'm sure there was some folks that probably got hurt and all of that. But there was a photo that was on display at the Old West Museum. I don't know if it's still out there, but just my favorite picture of all of that. That's makes me laugh at the big starts. And of course, Charlie Irwin, and his huge body on the horse. If you've seen that photo of, he's like 450 pounds and he's riding a horse.
Oh God. No, I haven't seen that one.
And it's a hilarious picture. And that's a big one. When you first walk in the museum, they have that large, but wish I had it, I'd show you. But a lot of fun things. And of course they have all the artifacts at the museum. There's a lot of ghostly activity at the Old West Museum. And there's been some investigations out there, but there's some crazy stuff goes on there. But anytime you're going to have all of these artifacts and old things, you may have something with it. And they do.
Yes, they do.
Oh, you found it!
Is that the one you were talking about, Jill?
Isn't that the best picture? How do you not love that?
That is great.
C.B. Irwin. You got to feel a little sorry for the horse, but
right?
Great find.
He was quite a character. So, and they didn't start the pancake breakfast for many years, and that became such a big thing now. I mean, there's just, the history is fun, and you're gonna have ghost activity, paranormal activity, along with all of this history. And the Wyoming Home Building, they have offices upstairs, and they see a gentleman that walks through, and he's a cowboy, and he's not quite opaque. He's just a little bit see-through. So they know, and he tips his hat and kind of nods at him, and he's a gentleman, but he never does anything harmful. So, there's just literally hundreds of those kind of things.
The Wyoming Home Building, that's where Tom Korn gave his so-called drunken confession.
Yeah.
In that room that comes right out the front. I would love to get in there. Yes. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody I knew did an investigation once.
We
have to look through my notes.
When the gunslingers were looking for a new place before the building next door burnt down, this was probably, it was mid-90s. We were looking to get off 15th Street. Johnny Vito owned the building.
I remember, I worked for Johnny. Yeah.
Johnny, what a character. He was a great guy. He's like, hey, come look at this. And we got to go up. A few of us got to go up into that building before Wyoming Home was in there, and go through there and see all the hand carved stuff. And gosh, it's a beautiful building inside.
I did get to go to in the basement once, which was interesting as well. And all these basements have sealed up doorways, which, tunnels or whatever. So that's always interesting as well. And there's a lot of always controversy of whether the tunnels exist, but I think they did. Well, I know they did. I mean, they had road collapse when they were doing, when a spot that wasn't filled in, when they were doing road construction, and it literally collapsed because there was nothing underneath. There was a tunnel in it. So, yeah.
Well, with all the doorways all over town, that have been sealed in, and even like in the bottom of the crown, you can see a little ways into the tunnel,
Yes. And I worked at Fowler's.
Like everyone knows.
Worked at Fowler's in high school, and they had a doorway as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got that steam plant the old steam plant on 17th and Snyder, 18th and Snyder, something like that. That, the infrastructure for it obviously wasn't above ground, right? It had to go somewhere. So,
yeah. Well, and you can see some things on the Sanborn maps, which are interesting, the old maps. I loved looking at the old blueprints and maps of Cheyenne too. I mean, there's so many great things. If somebody's kind of curious how Cheyenne looked, the museum, the Depot Museum, has that big, what do you call it? Wood.
Like the diorama type.
It's like an etching, but it's the wood chip drawing. I can't think of the name. Do you know what I mean? But it's a huge downtown city map, and it really is fun to stop and look at all that and figure out what all the buildings were and all of that. Yep. I spent way too many hours doing a lot of that, but it's, I love all the old pictures and seeing, how much it's changed and how many, I mean, in the past and present book, it's kind of fun because some things like the Tivoli building look almost the same, but then there's other things that you can't believe that was the same. so like Warren had a house downtown, which I think is where I don't remember the name of what's there. It was Quiznos for a while, and by the same block as the Whipple House. But I mean, there's just so many really big changes as well. And sadly, in the 60s, they came through and wanted everything to be Art Deco modern and tore out a lot of the really cool things. You know, we lost the Castle Dare, you know.
Yep.
And a lot of those things that actually collapsed when they tried to move it, but just too bad that we lost some of those great things. And the Nagel Warren, you know, it was a different stone, and it started all cracking and everything. It was inferior stone, so they stuccoed it all back together, and so that's why that's still doing well.
Yep, and this is a big example of it too.
Yes.
You know, as the Knights, this
Absolutely.
old Art Deco front on it when
Yes.
Sorry, pulling it up here. But you know, it went from that to
and then when you take that facade off, that's what's underneath.
Yep,
that's what's underneath. And so now part of that's uncovered. Well, no, actually, they took that whole blue thing down, didn't they? Now it's the new city county building, whatever.
Yeah, they took down Z's, and when they took it down, there were some old murals, you know, on the east side of the Knights building that got covered up, and we tried to, you know, get it documented, but you know, it was kind of gone away pretty quick. But yeah, there was some really cool stuff when they tore down that old building.
So on the I would say it's the north side of Fowler Z's, there was a little door right by the alley, and you could go in, and there was all these apartments upstairs and behind Z's that I didn't know were there until I actually had the opportunity to go in, and they hadn't been lived in for
long time,
50 plus years or more. So there were pigeons and such, but the beautiful wooden banisters, and each apartment had like a marble fireplace, and it was just, they had expensive elaborate wallpapers. Of course, they were peeling, and so I know that's all gone now, and I do have some pictures tucked away somewhere that I'll try to remember to share with you. But so cool. I mean, yeah, and it was just like the Knights of Pythias. How many people have never been in there and don't know that treasure is there and exists? So
yeah, we try to get everybody in, or try to get people in, you know, during the month of October with the haunted house, and you know, try to share the building with the public. And we've had some stuff with you know, the historical society.
Yeah, I think it's worth saving. You know.
Yep, absolutely.
I did a presentation for them on the Knights of Pythias once. Yeah.
That's what we're doing too. Like, we work with the Knights to get in there and do investigations, public investigations, where people can come with us. And a lot of those people are like, oh, I've always wanted to get in this building. And they have that opportunity too.
Yep.
I was mind blown the first time I went in. I mean, I just had no idea that was up there and had been there for all of those years. And, you know, had no idea. And it was, you know, the tall ceiling, like, what are the doors, like 17 foot high, big wooden, beautiful doors. It's amazing. So,
and then I'll have to send you some pictures, because you know, you remember the wall, right? How it was plastered over. So if you shined a light, you know, you could see the indentations, right, of the flowery, you know, patterns. We actually pulled off some old like cork boards and stuff from the wall and actually uncovered it, and it's velvet wallpaper, and we've got like a little 1 foot by 2 foot square that was uncovered, and you can it's still got some of the original color to it. It was really cool.
Love it. That is awesome.
Well, maybe before you head out this time, we can try to squeeze in an investigation and get you up there.
We haven't figured out our end game here for this winter, but we're definitely staying longer than we planned. So I'd love to
you're always
get together with you guys and do something. And thank you.
And I'm sure we could talk to you. I'm sure we could talk to you for another hour. But we're gonna go ahead and thank you for coming on. And
absolutely fun.
We're gonna
anytime
go ahead and let you go and pet the dog and scratch his ears for us.
I had the door closed, but he got it open himself, I believe.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Well,
so happy hauntings, everyone.
Thank you, Jill.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
bet.
We
Good
will
evening.
see you next week.
The Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show.